Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Future of Golf podcast. This is the series where we talk to the brightest founders in the golf industry every single week. This week is no exception. We are joined by Rudy, who is the founder of Golfscape, and they are a tee sheet aggregator that is revolutionizing the way that golf tourism and golfers book online. So Rudy joins us from, I'd imagine, sunny Dubai today. I'm sure the weather's pretty nice in your part of the world. Rudy,
Yeah,
how's the morning going? How's things?
very well, Graham. Thanks for the invite. Lovely to be here.
Awesome. I think that background gives all of us in the UK a little bit of hope. The picture there,
One day we're gonna end up there.
yeah. Perhaps viewers in the UK might not have seen blue skies for a few months, so we can at least dream of brighter days.
Yeah, no, indeed, I can't complain. But as with everywhere and its pros and cons, it gets quite hot here, and that finds us running back to London's, formidable summers, I guess.
Mm. I've seen that as well. There seems to be a general trend of a lot of English and UK would go to Dubai in the winter, and then your summers seem to be really hot, right? So people would just migrate away from there for a few months.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I was gonna say they come to Dubai and then they never leave, but yeah, I mean everyone gets away in the summer. It gets unbearable, especially in the hottest maybe July August timeframe.
Mm.
But there's probably not many lovelier places between December, Jan, Feb. That's kind of the high
Right.
season here, and that produces fantastic golf at these fantastic top 100 facilities they have. And it's just generally a very pleasant place and a time of year to be here.
Mm. And I think it's a good time speaking to you because obviously the European or the DP World Tour, as it would be now called, has finished its Middle Eastern swing where they played in the Dubai events. Obviously, my countryman Rory has always favorably liked Dubai. It's usually pretty good to him. Um, Maybe talk a little bit about the golf offering that Dubai has. Obviously, it's no secret nowadays the courses you guys have, but for someone living under a rock that hasn't heard about golf in Dubai, maybe talk a little bit about some of the venues you guys have over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. I think it's the UAE as a whole, but if we focus in Dubai, I mean, just the sheer number of I should say the ratio of courses that are a top on some top 100 list around the world is just staggering. From obviously the tournament hosts, Majlis at Emirates Golf Club, the Creek now in Abu Dhabi, it was Abu Dhabi Golf Club. Now it's Yas Links. Did we mention Earth is another one? And then ones that aren't even tour hosts are just so highly rated, including Els and Trump and Abu Dhabi again, Saadi Yat and Yas Acres. I mean, you're just spoiled for choice, I would say. So definitely add it to your bucket list if you haven't come here to golf. Um,
Absolutely.
but the region as a whole, I think it's very inspiring. I mean, again, I don't know when the first course opened, in the 60s or 70s, which would have been the Majlis Emirates Golf Club.
Mm.
Um, and now it's, there's 20 different courses, 20 plus, I guess, if you're counting each specific 18 hole. Doha again had one. Now it's got, six courses, I guess. A couple of those are 6 and 9 hole. Saudi is just on a tear, right? Again, they had a couple of oil company private courses, and I think they've got something like 30 courses planned to be built in just the next several, handful of years. So it's totally wild, this part of town, this part of the globe,
Wow.
I should say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the image I always have of Dubai is whenever they're playing, I can't remember what hole it is, but it's a tee shot. You would always see it in social media where it's kind of like they're heading across the desert and you see the skyline in the background, and they
Yeah.
always the shot tracers of that. That in my head is what Dubai golf looks like, and obviously it's quite a visual as well because you've got the contrast of the sand to then this perfectly manicured course as well. And I think, I mean, you don't get that contrast in many other places. I mean, Ireland, for example, it's green grass surrounded by other green grass. So
Yeah.
there's not as you've got the skyscrapers and then all this sand. So it really it makes the golf course stand out in some degree.
No,
But also, I guess you've got night golf as well, which I mean, it's not a thing in the UK just due to weather. But I guess you've tried that out a few times, have you?
Well, here's the big secret. Here's my big secret. I'm coming out of the closet, which is I'm not a golfer, right? That's, my background is software engineering essentially. So in addition to heading kind of the whole Golfscape enterprise, I also head our engineering teams, and that's kind of my background, and that's what I do. But dipped my toe into the golf world about 15 years ago or so, and just saw, from my perspective as a non-golfer, like it's really behind in some core places like technology and ease of use and user experience, from that perspective. And that kind of started me down this long road, and here we are. I think we turn 11 in about a month's time, so it's been quite a journey, I'd say.
Mm. Yeah, and we just had a brief intro call before this, and I think it's incredibly admirable for anyone to stick to something, 10 plus years in an industry and just diving into one rabbit hole. I think, especially in modern times, whenever and there's nothing wrong with this inherently, but you see people generally kind of like worm throughout their career and maybe have like a different job every 4 or 5 years. And it takes a certain degree of discipline and focus to stay in that one path for 10 years. But maybe if we rewind back to like the very inception of that, do you want to maybe chat a little bit about the early days in terms of what you were doing before golf and then what that transition period looked like to actually, start working on a golf software product?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think just one more, to add to your point, um, to stick for something for that long, you got to believe that it's gonna be prosperous from the beginning, and then with every challenge and every trying year after year, you've got to really believe that there is a kind of a an end goal essentially, and I think that's very true with what we do. So yeah, I mean, if we rewind to the mid 2010s, I guess, or early 2010s for that matter, I did a bit of work. So again, I mentioned I'm a software engineer, so I did basically IT consulting, technology consulting, and I did a bit of work, here and there, stockbrokers, brokerage platforms, email configuration, email systems, and then one of those clients who I did the emails for was in the golf industry, and I said, "Hey, do you guys know anything about ticket reservations?" So they're actually one of the tournament hosts. Yeah, okay, we can get into that, and that's when I got to see, well, how do people book and how does it work and da da da, and it was basically like, here's a form, you write it out with your pen, and then you send it by fax, and then
Okay.
just totally wild. So I got to see how the golf world operates essentially, while working with in the industry essentially. And then over one long summer, I thought, well, maybe this is something I can tackle. Being such a tech geek as I am, loving to travel and borrowing a lot of that knowledge of how can I get the best deal or how can I source it, or oh, it turns out buying a return ticket and throwing the rest out is cheaper than a one way, so that's a better option, and so on. I thought maybe all of these qualities and enjoyments that I have, plus my obviously tech background, maybe I can do something here. And I thought about it and toiled over it. And after that summer, I thought, well, okay, let's get started. And that was probably 6 months before company formation, and then the rest is history, I guess.
Mm. It's
So.
so interesting. Yeah, sorry to cut in there, Rudy, but I spoke to a guy, Jack, who's the founder of a company called Your Golf Booking,
Mhm.
who help out driving ranges with their booking system. And his initial concept or initial story was actually very similar in a sense that he was working in software engineering and then got pulled into the golf industry for a project. And I think it was for a driving range in London. And I guess just being witness to the inefficiencies there and then a bit of discovery. And then they realized there was a much bigger problem. And then he's on the same journey now, committed. I don't want to speak for him, but I think at least, 5, 6 years down the rabbit hole now of
Yeah.
driving this technology. Um, so, I mean, because that's interesting because I come from it from very much the opposite way in that I'm not technical, but I had the golf background. So, like, the industry is what I knew first before I knew how to build the tech. Whereas you were the reverse side of that, whereas you had all the tech skills, but you needed to find the problem, and then you just had that little break in the industry to get your first gig.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think, again, from my biased opinion, obviously, but I think that's a key lens to look through, right? I mean, there are obviously some fundamental reasons why, if you believe golf is, a little bit behind, I certainly do. There must be some fundamental reasons why. And I think it really comes down to golfers love to golf, and that presents from a business perspective a few challenges. If someone loves the end product so much, they're willing to jump through a few more hoops than the average person, right? So if you tell the guy, print this form, fill it out, fax it, well, more golfers would do it than a traditional, let's say, a typical hotel goer, hotel stayer.
Right.
Um, and so that's kind of created no real motivation to push the tech forward. I think where I come from, I look at the kind of status quo and I go, that's insanity. Where I can't do it online, I have to call another country in another time zone who speak another language and try to figure out my booking, or wait till I check in if I'm staying at a resort. Wait till I check in and then go to the concierge and hope my preferred tea times are available or that they're even open on those days.
Mm.
I thought that was insanity, and there has to be a way to get it to come together. But um, there's fundamental reasons why it doesn't exist yet, and until today. I mean, obviously, as far as we've come and as far as the industry as a whole has progressed, there's still fundamental reasons why we are here where we are, right? And so it started looking at, well, how can we address it? What are the issues, right? What are fundamental? Why is there no connectivity, and so on? Why is there no empathy for that end user? And why, how can we provide that? How can we connect all these things? And it's
Mm.
very, very difficult being a two-sided marketplace, right? A typical business starts in one place. Their suppliers are within a few miles. Their customers are within a few miles. They slowly grow. Great. Let's either move to this other part of town or to another city. And they grow that way. Whereas a two-sided marketplace, well, I've got clients in this faraway place, golf courses, and I've got customers, golfers all over the world. And now instead of being very localized, your coverage is worldwide times two, which is very, very, very difficult. And if I was to rewind and go back 10 years, I might have taken a different path, but that
Mm.
might have also not led us to where we are today.
Mm.
Being kind of this global, we call ourselves the Expedia for golf, very much so, right? The booking.com for golf,
Right.
because that doesn't exist. There simply is no service that can provide golf destinations, over 100 of them, from Hawaii to Vietnam, and dozens of spots in between. So
Mm.
that's a little bit about kind of our legacy, and where we started, and some of the journeys I guess we've gone through over those years.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's super interesting because, as you mentioned there, you have a two sided marketplace and you've got golf clubs on one hand who want to advertise their tee times, you've got golfers who obviously want to book them. Whenever you were first tackling the challenge, or maybe you first wanted to present your offering to the world, what was your initial approach? Did you want to get golf clubs on board first to advertise? I'd imagine that was kind of like igniting the match. And then I would imagine, again, I could be wrong, but if you didn't have the golf clubs buy in, then you wouldn't be able to advertise them. So then there'd be nothing for the golfers to see in the site, or perhaps you had a different approach.
Yeah, it is a very much chicken and egg, but in this puzzle, there's an answer, which is the egg, I guess. If you have no supply, it doesn't matter how much demand you have. There's nothing to
Yeah.
sell.
Right.
And again, as a nobody, as a newcomer, certainly as an outsider of the industry, but also as a new startup, you really had to get the courses to buy into the vision that, like, okay, there's a little bit of work we all have to do up front. Then I can go out and find these customers, which are all over the world. And so our first market was Bali, Indonesia, a wonderful place, which, what is that, 10 years later or 8 years later, I went back to and got married there.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
a full
a nice
circle story right there. That's
yeah,
pretty
a nice journey in its own. But yeah, Bali, same thing, a very small market, but very remote, whose the bulk of their rounds are all internationals and all tourists coming from the nearest Australia, which is very far away on its own, but then the rest of Europe and the Middle East and throughout Asia and the Americas.
Right.
Um, and it's the same story, right? Faxes, phone calls. It says book now on the website, if there even is a website, but it's not. There's no now. It should just be called book. Um,
Book
yeah,
any days in advance after going through 100 hoops. Yeah, I know what you're
yeah,
saying.
indeed. So, we had kind of a MVP of our tech. Give me a few tee times a day on the platform, and let's see from there. And it worked. First booking came in. How joyous, right? Is it real? Is this a test? Is
Yeah.
one of the engineers pulling my leg? No, it's the real deal. John Smith from wherever. All right, and then the next, and the next, and the next, and then we started expanding from there to our second and third, and here we are at over 100 markets. And from that point, also our offerings have expanded. So we take our same great tech that we power Golfscape.com with, our marketplace, and we take that back to the golf course. Would you like to power your direct customers, where there's no middleman, but
Yeah.
using the same tech? So that's our white label product, right? With a lot of our golf courses use it. And
Mm.
then one step further, well, with all these products that we have so far, well, we can only really attract the visitor who's willing to book online. What about the visitor who does email you still, or calls you, or is a walk-in? What about your members? What about the hotel guest? What about your DMCs and tour operators? And what about all these people? Surely there's a better way to service all of them.
Sure.
And then there is. And then just most recently in 2024, we're now in the business of stay and play. So the whole workflow, again, never before possible, brand new, where you can book the whole process in one shot, right? I'm going on March 5th. I'm staying for 4 nights, and these are the exact courses I want to play at these exact same times, and it's me and two mates of mine only. We're a group of three. This is just not possible today. Today, you've got to send the request to a tour operator or the resort themselves and wait and wait and wait and wait. And if you're lucky, you'll get an answer by Monday morning. And sometimes it takes longer. And what does that tour operator have to do? They also have to call the resort and check their availability, and call
Yeah.
the course and check their availability. And it might be 24, 48, or more hours before they come back to you. And at that point, well, you need to think about it. Da, da, da. And then when you finally commit, well, those tea times, that's live availability, they might not be there anymore. And it's
Right.
just very cumbersome for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Um,
I know that problem intimately, having worked in caddy programs in the UK and Ireland. So, I
yeah,
mean, we used to get like caddy requests coming in, like either it could be a week in advance or 2 months in advance. And then even for us, and that's not even the tea time booking, but there was a back and forth to arrange caddies. And the same problem existed where, you don't know if they're going to be available or not accurately there. So I can completely appreciate where you're coming from. But actually, going back to your point about kind of like the Bali MVP product, because I'm sure a good proportion of the visitor or the viewers of this show will be in the golf industry, but
mm,
also may have had an idea of their own at some point and thought about, maybe I don't agree with the way things are done in this particular part of the industry, or this thing could be streamlined a little bit more. It's interesting that your approach was not to tackle the whole world and try and solve everyone's problem, but you niched down initially, at least, to solve the problems of these Bali golf clubs that seem to really were struggling with facts in that process. Was that like a conscious approach to you, or were you just like led there through your own intuition?
yeah. Uh, yes and no. We still, because we're two sided, we focus our supply on one place, but the customer, right? If I have to market and advertise and so on, that customer could be anywhere on planet Earth.
Right.
Um, but why Bali? Well, because we contacted the various golf courses, and they were the first ones to get moving. Really, there,
Yep.
we quickly launched the next few markets, but we had an idea of where is it maybe the most cumbersome, where is it the most difficult to play that still gets meaningful demand. And we had conversations, and we spoke to courses, and we met with them, and we were using Zoom before it was cool, back then. Um, and I think Bali were the most motivated to move fast, and that's why we
Yeah.
launched there. But I think shortly thereafter, Dubai was kind of a next market that came online, and then on and on we went.
Mm.
Even most recently launching in the US, which we were always scared. We thought I mean, we have to be really, an Expedia for golf. Like we have to be known globally. It turns out, no, they have just as bad, just as bad of a process there than they do in the rest of the world. In fact, from a business perspective, you might argue, well, but they all speak the same language and they all operate on the same currency and they're relatively within a tight group of time zones. Um, but they still face the same issues, right? They still have many destination markets that struggle to capitalize on the demand or have to rely on multiple third parties, and they don't have all the tools that I think they need. And I think
Mm.
what we provide is the full stack, really, right? We come in with our marketplace as number one, right? It's very easy to expose your course globally now, right? Not, well, I work with Joe and Co. tour operator, and I'm only limited by his small reach, maybe, and then this other one and this other one. No, it's online, right? As the way of the world is. But also then our white label, our T sheet on top of that, our web services, our marketing, our stay and play now, our member app. I mean, we just really have a full suite again that nobody really comes close to in terms of the full coverage. So horizontally, just in terms of the geographies that we operate in, but also vertically, all the different pain points that a course may have that we
Mm.
have great solutions for. But you don't have to take them all. You can start with just one, and then usually that's how it ends up, right? Marketplace, it's the easiest because there's no cost to the golf course. Our model is very much performance based, right? If I don't
Mm.
deliver you any sales, I don't charge anything, and therefore you've lost nothing for all the marketing that I still incur a cost for.
Mhm.
Um, and then it usually ends up being, well, wow, we're pretty happy with that. What else do you guys do? And here we go into a few other services, and then a little while later, what else do you do, and so on. And that obviously allows us to service a course into more of our offerings. But at the same time, courses tell us, well, what about these other things that we don't do? And if we hear enough of said
Yeah.
thing, stay and play, we heard that how many hundreds of times. Well, maybe that's a business we should get into, and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting for me because I'm on the other side of the journey. So, I've just launched my product 18 months ago. We are growing pretty quickly, but we're still in the figuring out process of what we're going to be in 5 or 10 years time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting as a golf founder, like hearing your logic in terms of strategy to acquiring customers, and then I guess you went into high level product roadmap there as well. So if you see enough coverage in a certain thing, then you're like, okay, we need to bump this up a little bit to help these guys. So
Absolutely.
super interesting thoughts.
Yeah. We use this part of our journey in our sales pitch, right? And it goes as follows. Um, we work with top 100 facilities, and they have very demanding needs, right? I'll mention one that we worked with very closely in Abu Dhabi with a great GM there, Howie. Um, he wanted to just go above and beyond. Well, what if we could book their driving range bay, 1 hour before their tee time? Well, we can automate it, and I can tell them you're playing on bay number 7. And what if I plan out my locker rooms where a group comes in and they've got these 4 lockers up here, and then the next group, they're on the other side of the locker room because they're only 10 minutes apart. They're going to bump into each other. And then the next one somewhere else, then the next one somewhere else, then the next one in these 4 in here. Anyway, this whole algorithm. And we worked with him and we built great tech, and we were able to do that, printing their cart signs with the customer's flag who's coming from Finland, and he gets to see his nice, Finnish flag there next to his name on his cart that's waiting for him. All these very nice to haves. But this is a big, wealthy, top 100 facility.
Hmm.
Then we talked to another golf course, little tiny 9-hole. The GM is also the bartender, this kind of facility.
Yeah.
And he says, mate, I've got to be super efficient. I don't have a team of 200. I've got a team of 2. And I'm running around and I don't want to be printing papers and going here and going there and whatever. So we tailor our tech for his needs, making it more efficient, making it usable by less people and faster and no paperless. And you can use it on your mobile as a starter. You can see who checked in without having to get the receipts and the papers and whatnot. Well, it
Mm.
turns out the top 100 facility can also benefit from these very nice efficiencies. And the little nine hole who thought that technology would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement, well, he also gets it too, right? So, and everybody in between gets the best of all of these worlds. So everything we learn on the top end, all the way down to the low end, and everywhere in between, that feedback feeds in and it builds our tech and it helps everybody out, which is incredible, right? For the same access to the same system, and you get all the learnings and efficiencies and processes on the whole breadth of the market, which is incredible, I think.
Mm. Yeah, it's super interesting. And I agree with you there that different people in the market will require different things. So you're going to have to build this bespoke solution for your club in Abu Dhabi, whereas the nine hole course completely different needs. One of my goals with this podcast actually is to bridge the gap essentially between the golf courses and then the suppliers of software to make it like really understandable as to what they actually need, and so that people in the golf course side of it can understand what the thought process is of people creating this software, just so we can help each other out better, right? So one of the questions I was thinking about is, and I'm sure people in the golf operator side of it would have an answer to this, but what do people in the golf operator side, so let's say like a director of golf, what do they not understand about the golf software industry that would help them out, maybe make better decisions on kind of what software to purchase or what to be looking out for in the market? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on
Good
that.
question. Yeah. I think a lot of course operators assume that's the status quo. It's always been horrible. It's always going to be horrible. These archaic systems that take weeks to train us on, and that's just the way it is. And I would say that's not true. There's, especially in recent years, there's always better alternatives, right? There's always a market for founders like yourself and myself who see a problem and can solve it with technology. And that's stuff that wasn't available a year ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago. And I think it gets further, this kind of vision gets more murky or more cloudy because they look to their left and their right, and it's still the same system from when they first started as a teenager, right? It's still this system that looks like a 1980s Excel sheet and doesn't plug in online and goes down 3 times a month and I think they just have convinced themselves that it's just the way it is. And as I said in the beginning of the call, the golfers keep coming because the golfers still love golf and they wanna play golf. So they'll jump through these hoops where they won't in the online food and or the food delivery. I guess now it's all online, right? The accommodation, the travel and flights, travel and Ubers and Lyfts and whatnot. I think that's what I would say is the gap in the ages is closing in, right? We are slowly getting to 2024 in golf and beyond,
Mm.
let's say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watched another podcast there recently, and it was from the guys called I think it was the Old Tom Morris Ventures. They're called.
Mm,
So it's a group of private investors, and they're
yeah.
putting money into new golf startups. And I mean, their whole philosophy around it is there's never been a better time to be a golf tech founder, because I think there is this steepening of the curve of the transition, perhaps out of the old times and into this newer age of golf. So I think it's a good time for both sides. I think it's a good time for folks like us who are building in the industry, but also for maybe the younger guys or even the older guys working in golf clubs, because they're going to see this like systematic difference in the way they work, and their life is going to be a little bit easier, and maybe in your case generate more revenue as well from tee times. So I think from the stats I'm seeing, it's a very exciting time to be in the golf industry.
Absolutely, yeah. That's Matt and Evan there at Old Tom, right? They're doing great work, and I mean, the industry so deeply needs that, right? Because there needs to be people who are willing to take the risk to bring this great tech, and it is very much taking a risk because you never know on day one what's going to happen in a year or 10. But you also need people to support that along the way, right? So that's great to see the folks at Old Tom, and there's a few more, and they're growing with every year. That there is funding and there is support
Mm,
pushing the industry forward. And I mean, it just makes sense because there is such an opportunity from an investment perspective, and there's obviously such an opportunity from a founder perspective, and the industry will get there. It's just a matter of how and when and where. But it's impossible to perceive a world in 10 years where golf hasn't mostly caught up with the travel and accommodation world, I would say.
right. Right. Yeah, and it goes back to your initial point. It's the confidence in that vision that keeps you going down the path as well. If you have that North Star of 10 years, then it seems like being in the trenches now for like a couple of years to get there, it all seems worthwhile. So I
Yeah,
can
yeah. I
appreciate.
mean, we spoke about this last time, right? I mean, if you asked me on day one, I would have
Yeah,
said in 12 months, I'm going to be living on that island and adios, I'm done, right?
yeah,
An
yeah.
older, sorry, a younger and much more naive Rudy. But here we are. A lot of work, a lot of hard work, and just perseverance, right? On the downest of days, if you don't think that tomorrow's going to be brighter, then you'll you know you'll throw the towel in and go get a day job.
Absolutely.
Not for me. I don't think I'm hireable at this point.
Yeah, I think that that's been my approach as of recent is to just do this for long enough to avoid getting a real job. I think that's my general ambition with this. So
Yeah,
yeah, so that's super interesting. I think it also ties in to my last question, Rudy. Obviously, you've had great success with this. Being in it 11 years is a success in itself, but um, if you were to look ahead, maybe a couple of years or maybe 5 years down the line, where would you like to see Golfscape be positioned within the industry?
yeah, absolutely. Obviously, to us and the people close to us, we know and have heard about Golfscape, but by and large in the industry, I'm a nobody, right? Like we're still a very small and unknown brand. And my goal and hope is obviously over time to keep growing the brand, keep growing the name. And that means being in more markets, servicing more golf courses, and ultimately pleasing more customers. And I think that's what's going to get us there.
And if a golf course operator wants to have a little look at what you guys do, where would be the best place to connect with you? Online.
Golfscape.com. There's a course operators link at the bottom. They can kind of sign up. There's also a chat. They can chat with one of our team immediately. We're all on LinkedIn. Myself and my whole team, Sarah, Stefan, Jameson. They're free to reach out to any of us, and we'd be more than delighted to walk them through our offerings.
Awesome. Awesome. Rudy, that was an incredibly interesting episode. And to hear your story and the success you've had over the last few years, I think will be inspiring for a lot of people in the golf industry. And then also, hopefully, some useful information there for golf operators out there watching this and maybe have a look at what Rudy's done. But yeah, until next time, Rudy, thanks for coming on. And
Nice one. Much thanks, Graham. It was an absolute pleasure. Have a good one.